Dangerous characteristics of men and women to avoid. Hello everyone. Today, I would like to present to you an in-depth analysis of dangerous types of people that you must be cautious about in human relationships, especially romantic ones. In modern society, many people are trapped in unhealthy relationships, suffering psychological, emotional, and sometimes physical pain. Recognizing and avoiding these harmful relationship patterns in advance is an essential skill for self-protection and mental health. Relationships are a key factor in determining our quality of life. However, not all relationships help us grow and make us happy. Some relationships can drain our energy, destroy our self-esteem, and pose a serious threat to our mental health. How can we identify and avoid these toxic relationships? This audiobook is a journey to find those answers. Now, we will delve deep into the dark side of human relationships. Of course, this is not a topic that can be discussed with a light laugh. But sometimes facing uncomfortable truths is the best way to prevent future pain. So, let's examine the relationship types to watch out for one by one. Chapter 1. Analysis of dangerous male types. 1.1. Men with violent tendencies, physical or emotional abuser. Men with violent tendencies remain a widespread risk factor in modern society. Their characteristics can be summarized as serious deficiencies in emotional regulation ability. When angry, they tend to explode outwardly instead of engaging in rational conversation or inner reflection. This manifests as cursing, destroying objects, or physical threats. Interestingly, such violence typically develops gradually. It starts with minor irritation or anger, but over time, the intensity and frequency increase. Like a pot slowly heating a frog, the victim may not realize how serious the situation has become. More insidious is that such violence often appears alongside emotional manipulation. After violence, they shift responsibility with statements like, "You made me angry," or, "If you hadn't behaved that way, I wouldn't have done this." Consequently, the victim becomes trapped in a double bind of guilt and fear. According to modern psychological research, these violent behavioral patterns are often associated with childhood trauma, learned behavioral models, and impulse control disorders. However, understanding is entirely different from accepting. Whatever the cause, violence can never be justified. To be somewhat cynical, many violent men use the excuse, "I did it because I was angry." But strangely, they don't fall into this uncontrollable state in front of their boss or a police officer. This suggests that their violence is not the result of being out of control, but rather a form of control. 1.2. Men who consistently lie and make excuses. Pathological liar. A pathological liar is one of the most destructive figures in a relationship. Their characteristic is that the boundary between truth and falsehood is extremely blurred. From trivial everyday conversations to important decisions, they lack credibility to the extent that fact-checking is needed for everything they say. They strategically use lies, particularly when confronted with their mistakes or weaknesses. Instead of simple acknowledgement like, "I was wrong," they deploy complex excuses, blame others, and even play the victim. With phrases like, "I'm a victim too," or "understand me," they flip the situation to make you feel like you're the one who doesn't understand them. From a psychological perspective, pathological lying often stems from deep anxiety and inferiority. Believing that their authentic self is not worthy of love, they distort reality to create a better version of themselves. However, understanding the root cause of this behavior does not mean one should tolerate it. In relationships, trust is like a root system. Just as a rotting root endangers the entire tree, a relationship where trust has collapsed will eventually crumble. Let's have a little laugh. The only advantage of dating a liar is that your deductive skills develop. You naturally acquire detective skills that even Sherlock Holmes would envy. 1.3. Men with severe mood swings and no sense of responsibility. Emotionally immature. An emotionally immature man is like an emotional roller coaster. Today he might feel like the happiest person in the world, but tomorrow he might feel that everything in life is meaningless. These extreme mood swings are confusing even to themselves, but they particularly cause serious emotional drain on their partners. More problematic is the absence of responsibility that accompanies this emotional instability. They avoid responsibility for their inappropriate behavior, with statements like, "I was going through a difficult time then," or "I was under stress." This is similar to the Peter Pan syndrome, where they want the freedom that comes with being an adult, but not the accompanying responsibilities. According to developmental psychology research, emotional maturity does not necessarily correlate with age. Even adults in their 40s or 50s can remain at a teenage level emotionally. This primarily stems from unstable attachment relationships in childhood, lack of role models, or insufficient effort toward personal growth. A relationship with this type of man is like raising an additional child. You take on the role of a caregiver rather than a partner, eventually resulting in emotional exhaustion and isolation. Simply put, a relationship with an emotionally immature adult is like continuously withdrawing from your mental health savings account. 1.4. Workaholic men, or men whose life priority is only themselves, self-centered man. In modern society, emphasis on success and self-development can sometimes lead to extreme self-centeredness. A workaholic or self-centered man may outwardly appear ambitious and achievement-oriented, but he has serious flaws in relational aspects. The priorities in their daily lives are always clear: their work, their hobbies, their growth, their friends. And perhaps you're at the very end of that long list. Initially, you might be attracted to their passion and drive, but over time, you realize that you're merely an ancillary presence in their life. According to psychological analysis, such behavior may be an attempt to compensate for a deep inner emptiness or absence of self-worth. It's an attempt to cover inner instability through external achievements. But whatever the motivation, the result is the same: a relationship lacking meaningful connection and empathy. From a relationship dynamics perspective, this situation exemplifies an imbalanced exchange theory. You invest emotional, time-based, and sometimes financial resources in the relationship, but receive very little in return. It's like throwing resources into a black hole. Ironically, they often say they don't have time to invest in relationships, yet spend entire weekends on golf, gaming, or personal projects. Priorities are a matter of choice, and they have already made their choice. And unfortunately, that choice doesn't include you. 1.5. Men who take pride in their history with women. Player or narcissist. A man who is a player or narcissist type can often appear attractive initially. They typically have excellent social skills, pay attention to their appearance, and know how to charm the opposite sex. However, a deep problem lies behind this charm. One of their most distinct characteristics is talking about their past history with women as if it were an epic tale. They talk about ex-girlfriends, how popular they were with many women, even experiences of cheating, as if they were proud achievements. This suggests they view human relationships, especially romantic ones, as conquests rather than deep connections. From a psychological perspective, such behavior is often linked to deep insecurity. They are trying to confirm their worth by constantly pursuing new relationships. However, understanding this inner motivation does not justify their behavior. A relationship with this type of man is like being the latest model briefly displayed in a car showroom. For a while, you'll receive all the attention and praise, but soon you'll be replaced by a newer, more interesting model. To them, you're just part of their collection. To be a bit cynical, the Instagram accounts of these men are usually filled with muscle photos alongside philosophical quotes, as if Plato said, "Bro, do more squats." First point 6. Men who try to control and manipulate. Controlling and manipulative. A controlling and manipulative man is one of the most dangerous types in relationships. Their behavior is often disguised as protection or expressions of love, making it difficult to identify initially. The characteristic of this type is excessive interference in all aspects of the partner's daily life. They try to monitor and control what you wear, the friends you meet, your schedule management, and even your phone usage. Initially, it starts with sweet words like, "because I love you so much," or "because I'm worried about you." But over time, it becomes a constraint that takes away your freedom and identity. Psychologically, such behavior often stems from serious anxiety and lack of self-confidence. It's an attempt to alleviate their anxiety by controlling their partner. However, the result is serious psychological harm to the partner. The health of a relationship is often defined by the balance between autonomy and intimacy. In a healthy relationship, both are fulfilled, but in a controlling relationship, intimacy, often distorted into dependency, completely overwhelms autonomy. One uncomfortable truth about techniques used by modern controlling men is surveillance using technology. Location tracking apps, demands to share social media accounts, checking text messages, all are control mechanisms of the digital age. The phrase, "if you love me, you should have nothing to hide," is not a sign of healthy love, but of distrust and control. 1.7. Lazy and unmotivated men. Lazy and unmotivated. The final dangerous male type we'll examine is the lazy and unmotivated man. They often display Peter Pan syndrome, avoiding adult responsibilities and showing an attitude as if they want to remain in adolescence forever. Characteristics of this type include difficulty maintaining consistent employment, lack of plans for the future, and constant excuses and complaints. They shift responsibility for their situation to external factors with excuses like, "the market is bad right now," "there's no job that matches my talent," or "my boss doesn't understand me." A more problematic point is that they often show excessive economic and emotional dependence on their partner. Like a parent-child relationship, you take on the role of caregiver. This distorts the dynamics of the relationship in the long term and drains your energy. From a social psychological perspective, such behavior can sometimes be the result of learned helplessness. Past experiences of failure make them avoid new challenges. Also, in some cultural contexts, irresponsible behavior in men is more easily tolerated. To be a bit cynical, these men often say they are in the process of finding their true self, while staying in the same place for years, as if their true self is hiding between the sofa cushions. 1.8. Comprehensive warning signs and additional cautions. In addition to the 7 dangerous male types we've examined, there are several additional warning signs. These signs may overlap with the types mentioned earlier and can help identify potentially problematic relationships more broadly. First, be cautious of someone who has problems in all human relationships. If they have experienced conflict or disconnection with almost everyone in their life, ex-girlfriends, parents, friends, workplace colleagues, it's likely not a coincidence. The common element in all relationships is themselves. Second, someone who never acknowledges their mistakes and always plays the victim is a warning sign. This pattern indicates a profound lack of self-awareness and willingness to grow. Third, Be wary of someone who can't properly express their own emotions while evaluating and pointing out yours. Emotional vulnerability should be a two-way street. A one-sided demand for exposure suggests an imbalanced power dynamic. Fourth, be cautious of someone whose words and actions tend to hold you back rather than help you grow. Healthy relationships support each other's development and growth. In contrast, toxic relationships often involve one person hindering the other's potential realization. From a psychological perspective, these patterns are often connected to deep instability, attachment issues, or narcissistic tendencies. However, understanding the root cause of behavior does not mean one should tolerate it. To summarize simply, if you are consistently unhappy in your relationship, feel drained of energy, and experience lowered self-esteem, it's not a coincidence. It's a system flaw, and it's time to reassess the relationship. Chapter 2. Analysis of dangerous female types. Now we will look at the female types to be cautious about in relationships. Toxic relationship patterns are not limited to gender and can appear in all forms of relationships. To provide a balanced perspective, we will also analyze female behavioral patterns to watch out for in relationships. 2.1. The victim cosplayer. Always pitiful woman. A woman who consistently utilizes the role of victim can be very draining in relationships. The biggest characteristic of this type is continuously claiming that she is being treated unfairly and eliciting sympathy. They often repeatedly tell stories of being abandoned by ex-boyfriends, family, and friends. Initially, you may feel a natural desire to empathize with their sad past and offer help. However, over time, you realize that this victim narrative is being used as a tool for emotional manipulation, exploiting your sense of responsibility and protective instincts. From a psychological perspective, this behavior is often associated with learned helplessness or secondary gain. As they receive benefits such as attention, care, and avoidance of responsibility through the victim role, this pattern is reinforced. In the long term, such relationships seriously damage your confidence and self-esteem. As you are exposed to continuous emotional manipulation and unpredictability, you begin to doubt your own judgment and feelings. This is often similar to the effect of gaslighting. An interesting fact is that manipulative women often excuse their behavior as simply being emotional. However, it's worth noting that their emotional outbursts strategically occur to achieve specific goals or control situations. They are fully capable of regulating their behavior, but selectively choose not to because they know it's an effective control mechanism. 2.3. The greedy type. Woman who likes money, luxury goods, and showing off. A greedy woman tends to prioritize material gains in relationships. Their most prominent characteristic is a consumption-centered value system, focusing on luxury brands, expensive gifts, and high-end travel. Of course, it's natural for everyone to want to enjoy nice things. However, with the greedy type, these material desires overwhelm the essence of the relationship. In the early stages of dating, this tendency might appear as a simple difference in taste or lifestyle. However, over time, you'll find that financial demands grow larger, and you feel increasingly defined by the material benefits you can provide. From a psychological perspective, this behavior is often associated with a deep desire for external validation and social status. Material possessions become external symbols of self-worth and may be an attempt to fill an inner emptiness. According to relationship research, materialistic values are often associated with lower relationship satisfaction. People who prioritize material goals generally tend to focus less on core elements of relationships such as care, empathy, and emotional intimacy. To be somewhat cynical, a relationship with a greedy woman is like dating an ATM. Your attractiveness lies not in your personality or character, but in what's in your wallet. And unfortunately, like an ATM, You'll lose her interest the moment you can no longer provide money. 2.4. The excessively jealous type. Woman with strong control desires. A woman displaying excessive jealousy and desire for control can cause serious problems in a relationship. Their most prominent characteristic is a persistent attempt to monitor and control all of their partner's actions. This control manifests in various forms: checking your smartphone, monitoring social media activity, restricting interactions with friends of the opposite sex, and even trying to control time spent with family. Initially, such behavior might be misunderstood as an expression of love and concern. It might be justified with phrases like, "I do this because I love you that much." From a psychological perspective, such jealousy and desire for control are typically related to deep insecure attachment. This may stem from childhood experiences, past betrayal experiences, or profound doubt about self-worth. Over time, such a controlling relationship feels like a psychological prison. Your freedom and human relationships are gradually restricted, and you lose independence in many areas of life. It becomes very difficult to maintain a healthy self-identity in such an environment. In modern society, technology provides new tools that reinforce these controlling behaviors. Location tracking apps, shared passwords, social media activity monitoring, all are control mechanisms of the digital age. The phrase, "It's not that I don't trust you, I just want to check," essentially means precisely a lack of trust. 2.5. The emotional fluctuation type, emotional roller coaster. A woman with severe mood swings can cause extreme instability in a relationship. Their biggest characteristic is unpredictable emotional changes and emotional reactions that are often disproportionate to the situation. They experience extreme changes, happy and affectionate one moment, angry or depressed the next. These mood swings can often occur with minor triggers or even without any apparent reason. From a psychological perspective, such behavior may sometimes be associated with emotional regulation disorders, trauma responses, or various mental health conditions. Of course, all humans experience emotional changes, but what becomes problematic is the frequency, intensity, and unpredictability. From a relationship dynamics perspective, this emotional instability puts you in a constant edge of a cliff state. You always worry about when the next explosion will occur and excessively adjust your behavior to stabilize her mood. Additionally, you're forced to be her emotional garbage can, becoming the target of all negative emotions. In the long term, such relationships can make you emotionally unstable as well. Exposure to continuous stress, worry, and unpredictability affects your mental health. To be somewhat cynical, a relationship with an emotionally fluctuating woman is like living in a typhoon region without weather forecasts. You don't know when a storm will hit or how severe it will be. Eventually, you live always preparing for the worst. 2.6. The pathological liar exaggerator, woman who makes up her stories. A woman with pathological lying or exaggeration tendencies can cause serious trust issues in a relationship. Their most prominent characteristic is that the boundary between truth and falsehood in their stories is blurred. They often exaggerate or completely fabricate their background, achievements, and experiences. Initially, such exaggeration might seem like an attempt to appear impressive. However, over time, a more serious pattern of lies emerges. From a psychological perspective, such behavior often stems from deep self-esteem issues or dissatisfaction with reality. Because they don't feel their authentic self is valuable enough, they create a more impressive version of themselves. In a relationship, this behavior creates extreme distrust. You find yourself in a situation where you constantly need to fact-check her words, finding it difficult to distinguish which stories are true and which are exaggerated. In more dangerous scenarios, these lies can be used to deceive you or gain financial benefits beyond simple exaggeration. Many cases of romance scams start with this pattern. Considering that trust is the foundation of all relationships, persistent lying destroys that foundation. It's like building a house on sand. You cannot construct a solid relationship. 2.7. The gaslighting type. Woman who frequently says, "You're the problem." Gaslighting is one of the most destructive forms of psychological manipulation in relationships. This type of woman makes you doubt your own memories, perceptions, and judgments. Their most prominent characteristic is always blaming you for problem situations. They consistently deny your perspectives, feelings, and memories, claiming that you are too sensitive, not remembering correctly, or being irrational. From a psychological perspective, gaslighting is a very serious form of emotional abuse. It distorts the victim's perception of reality and makes them doubt their own senses and judgment, ultimately making them more dependent on the abuser. This process usually progresses gradually. It starts with small things. "I never said that. That's your imagination," and gradually develops into bigger reality distortions. Over time, victims begin to doubt their perceptions and rely on the abuser's perspective. In extreme cases, victims of gaslighting can fall into a state similar to psychological slavery. They completely distrust their own judgment and depend on the abuser for all decisions and perceptions. The most insidious aspect of such relationships is that victims often don't even realize they are being abused. They become so accustomed to having their experiences distorted and denied that they no longer recognize it as abnormal. 2.8. Additional warning signs and overall summary. In addition to the 7 dangerous female types we've examined, there are several additional warning signs. These signs may overlap with the types mentioned earlier and can help identify potentially problematic relationships more broadly. First, be wary of women who avoid their responsibilities and always blame others. This pattern of avoiding responsibility is a serious obstacle to building a mature relationship. Second, a woman whose relationships with others, family, friends, ex-boyfriends, etc., are destructive or severed is a warning sign. Past relationship patterns often serve as predictive indicators of future relationships. Third, be cautious of behaviors that consistently hinder or ignore your development, goals, and human relationships. Healthy relationships support each other's growth. Fourth, be wary of a woman who shows jealousy toward your success or happiness, or tries to interfere with it. Viewing a partner's achievements as one's own relative failure is not a sign of a healthy relationship. From a psychological perspective, these patterns are often associated with unresolved internal conflicts, insecure attachment styles, or serious self-esteem issues. Whatever the cause, the result is the same: an unhealthy, sometimes destructive, relationship dynamic. Chapter 3. Psychology of Toxic Relationships. Why do we stay? So far, we have examined dangerous types of men and women, but one important question remains. Why do many people stay in these toxic relationships? Understanding the psychological mechanisms that prevent ending a relationship, even after recognizing problems, is an important first step in breaking free from these patterns. 3.1. Intermittent reinforcement and trauma bonds. One of the most powerful principles in human behavioral psychology is intermittent reinforcement. This is the concept that behavior is more strongly reinforced when rewards are given irregularly rather than consistently. In toxic relationships, this principle plays an important role in forming so-called trauma bonds. When an abuser is not always cruel, but sometimes very kind and caring, the victim thinks they can endure for those good moments. Just as a slot machine keeps people playing by giving rewards only occasionally, a toxic partner keeps the other person bound to the relationship through intermittent affection and positive experiences. This irregular reward pattern actually creates a stronger psychological bond than consistent good treatment. Moreover, the cycle of abuse and affection can be biochemically addictive. Reconciliation after tension promotes the secretion of dopamine and oxytocin, potentially creating an effect similar to drugs. 3.2. Sunk cost fallacy and wishful thinking. In economics, the sunk cost fallacy refers to the tendency to continue making irrational decisions because of what has already been invested. In relationships, this manifests as the thought, "I've already invested so much time and emotion, ending the relationship would make it all a waste." Added to this is wishful thinking. Thoughts like, "He, she will change. We can go back to how good it was. If I love enough, things will be different." This unrealistic optimism keeps people in relationships despite objective evidence to the contrary. Psychologists view this as similar to the gambler's fallacy. Just as a losing gambler continues playing thinking, "I'll win soon," in toxic relationships, there exists the irrational expectation that change will come soon. 3.3. Low self-esteem and self-worth. One of the paradoxes of toxic relationships is that they are both a result and a cause of low self-esteem. People who feel they don't deserve better treatment are more likely to normalize and accept abusive behavior. Moreover, toxic relationships further damage self-esteem over time. Continuous criticism, manipulation, and abuse make you feel more negatively about yourself, making it harder to leave the relationship. According to research by psychologist Nicole Lee and her colleagues, learning to love and respect oneself is a key element in breaking free from toxic relationship patterns. As self-worth improves, people naturally expect and demand better treatment. 3.4. Social pressure and relationship idealization. In many societies, being in a relationship is valued more than being single. The implicit message that being single equals failure causes many people to remain in low-quality relationships. Additionally, media and popular culture often romanticize toxic relationship patterns. Jealousy and possessiveness are wrongly portrayed as evidence of love, and conflict as a sign of passion. This idealization of relationships normalizes problematic behavior and even makes it seem desirable. Sociologists view this as part of script theory. We internalize narratives about how relationships should be and try to follow those scripts even if they are harmful. Chapter 4. Characteristics of healthy relationships. A contrasting perspective. Having understood the characteristics of toxic relationships, it's now important to examine what healthy relationships look like. By contrasting healthy and toxic relationships, we can more clearly evaluate the quality of relationships. 4.1. Mutual respect and respect for boundaries. The foundation of a healthy relationship is mutual respect. This goes beyond mere politeness to deeply respecting each partner's thoughts, feelings, needs, and boundaries. In a healthy relationship, partners recognize and respect each other's individuality. They establish and maintain healthy boundaries between themselves and their partners, and any behavior that violates these is immediately addressed. In contrast, in toxic relationships, boundaries are continuously ignored or violated. One partner tries to absorb the other's identity, and individuality is misunderstood as evidence of lack of love. 4.2. Effective communication and conflict resolution. In a healthy relationship, partners communicate openly and honestly. They clearly express their feelings and needs and make a genuine effort to listen to the other person. When conflicts arise, they focus on the problem itself rather than attacking each other. They find compromises and learn to agree to disagree when necessary. Conflicts are seen as opportunities for relationship development. In contrast, communication in toxic relationships is often characterized by manipulation, blame, defense, or withdrawal. Conflicts are used as weapons to hurt rather than being resolved. 4.3. Reciprocity and balance. Healthy relationships have a balance of give and take. Both partners invest in the relationship, and one person does not consistently sacrifice alone. This doesn't mean everything always has to be 50-50. The balance may change during different periods of life. However, in the long term, the relationship should benefit both sides. In toxic relationships, one partner consistently gives more and receives less. The balance is severely tilted, and this imbalance worsens over time. 4.4. Support for personal growth. In healthy relationships, partners support and encourage each other's personal growth. They help each other become the best versions of themselves and rejoice in each other's successes as if they were their own. These relationships are characterized by a growth mindset. Partners give each other wings rather than tying each other down. They support each other's dreams and aspirations, providing challenges when needed. In contrast, in toxic relationships, one partner often hinders or becomes jealous of the other's growth. They view the partner's achievements as threats and may deliberately lower confidence or interfere with opportunities. 4.5. Trust and safety. Healthy relationships are based on deep trust and emotional safety. Partners can be vulnerable with each other and show their true selves without fear of judgment or rejection. In such relationships, promises are kept and trust is continuously confirmed through actions. If betrayal occurs, it is addressed seriously and genuine efforts are made to rebuild the relationship. In toxic relationships, trust is repeatedly broken. Promises are not kept, and lies or deception are common. Consequently, the relationship is characterized by constant anxiety and suspicion. Chapter 5. Healthy relationships from a biblical perspective. So far, we have examined the characteristics of toxic and healthy relationships through modern psychology and relationship research. Now, let's complement these insights with a biblical perspective. The Bible has provided wisdom about the nature of human relationships for thousands of years, and this ancient wisdom remains applicable to modern relationships. 5.1. Definition of love. Insights from 1 Corinthians 13. The most famous biblical passage about love is 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. This passage clearly describes the characteristics of healthy love. Comparing it with the characteristics of toxic relationships, the difference is stark. Love is not self-centered, i.e., it is not self-seeking, not controlling, i.e., it is kind and not abusive, i.e., it does not dishonor others. Many behaviors seen in modern toxic relationships directly conflict with this biblical definition. Controlling behavior, jealousy, self-centered attitudes, getting angry, continuously bringing up past wrongs, all are far from the love described in 1 Corinthians. 2. Mutual respect and submission in Ephesians. Ephesians 5:21 teaches, "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." This verse emphasizes the importance of mutuality and balance in healthy relationships. In healthy relationships, partners respect each other and listen to each other's needs and hopes. This contrasts sharply with toxic relationships, where one person consistently dominates the other. Furthermore, Ephesians 4:29 advises, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. This contrasts with the verbal abuse commonly seen in toxic relationships. Third, wisdom from Proverbs, warnings and advice about relationships. Proverbs provides various warnings about relationships, especially dangerous relationship types. Proverbs 22:24-25 says, "Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared." This verse gives a clear warning to avoid relationships with people who have violent tendencies. Similar to the concept of emotional contagion in modern psychology, the Bible teaches that we are influenced by the characteristics of the people with whom we spend time. Proverbs 16:28 also says, "A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends." This verse warns about liars and those who provoke conflicts. This aligns with the characteristics of the pathological liar and emotionally volatile types discussed earlier. Fourth, practical application. Relationship wisdom from Philippians. Philippians 2:3-4 provides practical guidance for healthy relationships. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. This verse emphasizes mutual respect and consideration rather than selfishness and self-centeredness. It highlights the importance of a balanced relationship that considers not only one's own needs, but also those of the partner. Chapter 6. Conclusion. Practical steps for healthy relationships. Having identified dangerous relationship types and understood the characteristics of healthy relationships, how can we now apply this knowledge in real life? Here are practical steps to avoid toxic relationships and develop healthy ones. Self-awareness and establishing values. The first step to a healthy relationship is knowing yourself and establishing your values. This includes, first, recognizing your relationship patterns. Are there recurring patterns in past relationships? Are you repeatedly attracted to certain types of partners? Second, setting personal boundaries. Establish clear standards for what is acceptable and what is not. Learn to consistently maintain these boundaries. And third, establishing self-worth. The Bible teaches that we were created in God's image, Genesis 1:27, and have infinite value. Internalize this truth. Paying attention to early warning signs. Signs of toxic relationships often appear in the early stages. However, many people ignore or rationalize these signals. Pay attention to, first, minor boundary violations. Small boundary violations are often precursors to larger violations. Second, early control attempts. Be cautious of possessiveness or jealousy packaged as expressions of love. Third, patterns of avoiding responsibility. Observe how they respond to mistakes. Genuine apologies and responsible actions are signs of healthy maturity. And fourth, alignment with 1 Corinthians 13. Evaluate how well their behavior aligns with the biblical definition of love. Developing healthy communication skills. Healthy communication is central to all good relationships. Consider these conversation techniques to improve your communication level. First, using I messages. Start conversations with "I feel" rather than "you always." Second, practicing active listening. Listen to understand, not simply to respond. Third, communicating honestly and transparently. James 5:12 advises, "Let your yes be yes, and your no, no." And fourth, viewing conflict as an opportunity for growth. Ephesians 4:15 teaches, "Instead, Speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him who is the head, that is Christ. Building community and support networks. No relationship can thrive in a vacuum. Healthy relationships develop best within a supportive community. Here are practical ways to utilize supportive communities. First, finding advisors and mentors. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." Second, maintaining a group of trustworthy friends. Keep people close who can provide objective feedback about your relationship. Third, seeking professional help when needed. Counselors, pastors, or therapists can help navigate relationship patterns. And fourth, participating in a spiritual community. Hebrews 10:24-25 encourages us to consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. Final reflection. Relationships as life choices. Relationships are among the most important choices in our lives. Choosing with whom to share our lives has a profound impact on our happiness, growth, and even spiritual health. Following biblical wisdom, we should approach relationships as intentional choices rather than mere emotional decisions. 1 Thessalonians 5:21-22 advises, "Test them all, hold on to what is good, reject every kind of evil." And we should pursue healthy relationships based on God's truth, rather than following cultural expectations or temporary emotions. Finally, Proverbs 3:5-6 promises us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." In the journey of relationships, we can follow this wisdom and trust in God's guidance. See you in next episode. Thank you.